I'm Robert Scoble, and one of the most competitive fields in the Web 2 space is the social enterprise world, otherwise known as Enterprise 2.0. And today we're going to see Socialcast, which is leading in that field. So who are you?
So I'm Tim Young, CEO and founder of Socialcast. I started the company about a year and a half ago, and it's focused on enterprise collaboration, basically bringing microblogging and activity streams that have been popularized on the consumer web and bringing them into large enterprises.
Since I was here last in March, you've gotten funded, you've hired a lot of people, including one of the stars from Facebook, and you've done a lot of crazy stuff, and now you're coming out with a new version.
Yeah, so a lot has transpired since we met last March, and next week, we're basically bringing out a brand new product. It's called Socialcast Reach, and it basically extends that activity stream, microblogging components, but instead of having you come to a particular site or an app to use it, we're basically embedding those conversations in context in mission-critical apps, things like SAP and Salesforce and Taleo HR, so that employees actually can just communicate as they're working in their day-to-day apps, and they don't have to go to like a separate place like other software to actually collaborate.
That's pretty smart. Now you're in the middle of a very competitive space, right? I think out of all the startups I talked to, this is probably the most competitive because you have Yammer, you have Salesforce, right? You have Microsoft trying to stay relevant with SharePoint. You have social text and Jive. Jive is threatening to go IPO soon. And all of these are aimed at trying to make the corporation more social, more collaborative, more interactive. What makes you different?
Yeah, so I think the space is very competitive. I mean, you've got obviously the giants like Salesforce and Microsoft who are moving in, and then you've got just a lot of activity in the startup world, right? Whether it's companies like Yammer, Social Text, or even Jive. What makes us different, I think, is we're really focused on business agility. So a lot of these other companies have borrowed so heavily from sites like Twitter and Facebook, and they're all really about having employees share, and we're really focused on doing. So how do we attach this collaboration to business activities, business processes, and really making a company, particularly large organizations, move from being really process-centric to being people-centric.
Explain what that would look like. What would be an actual task that somebody would do at a real company in your tool that they couldn't do in a Salesforce Chatter or some other tool?
Yeah, so if you're, let's say you're at a book publisher, so where a lot of our clients are, and they're basically looking at a particular book like Harry Potter, right? And they're looking at it from an inventory perspective. So they're in an inventory application, they've pulled up the ISBN number, and right there in that application, they can now communicate in context with all the other people that are working on that. So if they need to maybe order new books, they can basically send out that broadcast message to the people in marketing, the editor. It's all within context, and all the historical conversations around that object are right there inside the app.
Who was it that you hired from Facebook?
Yeah, so we hired Monica Keller, who's now our director of engineering, and she was at Facebook working on activity stream spec and newsfeed.
What's the infrastructure that's different about what you guys are doing downstairs compared to what she was working on at Facebook? Because I have a sense that integrating into all these enterprise systems is quite different than building a system from scratch for consumers, right?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple different challenges. One is we're building for a closed network. So anytime we're building it for a customer, maybe like General Motors, we know kind of basically how many users that is. And then we're also able to deploy it either in SaaS, in the cloud, or either on-premise. So we're using virtual appliances to basically achieve that. One of the big differences between the two is really the real-time nature. So our product is completely real-time, and a way to look at it is very similar to what FriendFeed was doing. Yeah. So you can watch conversations organically evolve right on the page or within another business app. Whereas Facebook, there's obviously a lot of refreshing, and you got to check in on your stream. So that's, there's some big challenges in terms of scalability. I think one reason we're able to do it really effectively is that we do have this closed network option. So we have less users per network, and we're able to scale that, in real time. But we've invested about a year and a half just in the infrastructure piece to be able to do these kind of concurrent operations and really scale the feed.
Now, part of business is having real-time information, not from people, but from machines, cash registers, and inventory management systems, right?
Yeah.
If I worked at Walmart, I'd want to know how many Xbox Connects were being sold on November 4th when that gets released, and where they're being sold, and who has extras in their stores, so we can redistribute them around the stores, right?
Yeah.
And can I start with that information and then lay over the people who are working on that problem so that they can talk about that data that's being shown?
Well, I think that's one of the most interesting parts about how we approach the problem versus other vendors. So we take a very data-centric view of the feed. So there's not just people's questions or status updates in the feed, but it's really data interacting with people. So when there are those kind of business exceptions, right, like you've run out of inventory of a product, or sales have exceeded some certain point, or there's a unique customer support issue, that data is coming into the feed and it's being shown to the relevant people in the business. And then those people can collaborate on it, contextually, and they can also look at related exceptions over time. And it's really that it's marrying the data aspect, the exceptions from a business system, to the human analysis side that really helps solve problems in a business. And when you look at, from an employee perspective, what employees spend most of their time on, it's really dealing with these exceptions, right? It's like custom contract terms, or a product's out of order. And so building the system and the building blocks to let people do that reduces things like email and how many meetings they have.
Now, one of your real differentiators is I can run your system on my own machines inside my own firewall, right? I don't have to stick my data up on some server. Like with Salesforce, I have to stick it up on Salesforce's servers, or if I use Google stuff, I have to stick it up on Google stuff, or Zoho, I have to stick it up on Zoho stuff. That's scary to a lot of CIOs, right? CIOs often want to protect their data and make sure that critical information never leaves their firewall. Tell me about that machine and how flexible it is.
Yeah, so I think early on we made a choice to work with large enterprises. I think other vendors in the space have chosen to kind of do the more SMB mid-market route. But what got our team really excited was working with big companies with 50, 100, 200,000 employees. And I think although in the Valley here we love talking about SaaS, and I believe that the future is SaaS, and cloud computing, the reality is there's just a lot of industries that are heavily regulated, and they're just getting comfortable with the cloud. So when you talk about their business systems as kind of bricks, and Socialcast being the mortar that connects all of them together, it's scary to obviously have that type of application in the cloud for many of them. So we offer it on-premise. Most of our customers have some virtualized data center, and using VMware's technology and virtual appliances, you can be up and running in a day. You can have our whole app, it clusters itself, you get all the consolidated backup, high availability, all VMware's tools. And for IT, there's really no new training involved. And the ability to run this in your own data center securely for things like healthcare and government, financial services firms, it's just a big win for them. And they want these same tools, but they just need the data security until kind of laws and they get more comfortable, over the next decade with the cloud.
Yeah. Working at a big company, we work at Rackspace, and inside Rackspace there's several water cooler areas, places you can get a Coke or a coffee or whatever. And those seem to be really interesting places to share information, pollinate information around. Isn't this kind of service replacing those in some way?
Well, I think they're enhancing and augmenting them. I don't know if they're completely replacing them. But what they are doing is that they're opening up the geography, right? So where if you're in a business, let's say, take one of our customers like Nokia, for instance, and you're at one of their sites across the world, the water cooler effect's great for you and maybe the couple hundred people that work there. But if you're not in headquarters or the other satellite locations, you don't have that same kind of physical contact. Yeah. So these apps are really breaking down that geographic barrier and basically allowing those conversations to occur. And the interesting thing is, it's really the sharing of best practices, I think, which is really giving companies that competitive edge that they want.
In those areas, we have TV screens that run all the time. And once in a while, news comes onto those, we watch CNBC and CNN and other news channels, and once in a while something will happen to our industry that gets on those TV screens, and everybody seems to want to huddle around them. We saw it when our stock price was changing pretty radically last week. People were huddling around those screens. Is there a place for video in these social streams? And tell me about how you would use video, both streamed and on-demand kind of video.
Yeah. So I mean, I think video is a big component. I mean, it's great for learning. It's great for sharing things. In our streams, you can embed video, so you can upload a video, you could embed it, share it directly from YouTube or Vimeo, or if you have an internal video site, you could comment on it and it would come in the stream. And users use it quite a bit. I mean, a lot of times we'll see, especially at retailers, we'll actually have the retailer give flip cams to employees, take them inside their retail store and show like, hey, this is how I merchandise this new product, right? And they'll videotape it, they'll upload it. And then, people all across the country that are in other retail stores of that brand, they basically get to learn about it, right? So they upload videos of how they did it. There's all kinds of sharing, discussions, and it just really makes the company, especially for companies that are geographically dispersed, feel, much more together, right? And so like one of our customers, Philips, talks about how do we make 100,000 employees feel like 100 or like 10? And, I think video adds just that extra kind of personal component to your messages that allows them to do this.
Do you think you're going to partner with video conferencing companies? Sort of like a Skype, but I just interviewed VIVU, VIVU, which has multi-party video conferencing, so we could have a meeting right in the social space and people could watch it or join in. Are you going to do partnerships like that with people who are focusing on video conferencing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we're actively looking at. I mean, right now we're basically doing partnerships with kind of big mission critical app vendors, and I think further down the line we will do things like integrate kind of video chat, integrate regular chat, more kind of synchronous communication. I mean, the feed is really, although it's real time, it's really focused on that async ability, and I think over time we're going to bring in other features that really allow you to do basically transcend synchronous to async. I think will be a big feature.
In the consumer web, we have Facebook profiles and Google profiles, and now I think one of your sister companies is doing About.me, right? And we're starting to build rich profiles where I can look up who you are. Are you a Republican or a Democrat? Are you male or female? I obviously know you're male, but and a whole bunch of other things. What music you like, all that stuff. Are you doing the same thing for the enterprise, where I can see who you are as a work person and what your reputation is inside the company?
Yeah, I mean, we are. And so the interesting thing we're doing is we found that it's difficult to get employees to fill out deep profiles. To encourage them, to upload a photo and fill out, 20 or 30 fields. So one thing that we're doing that's pretty unique is we're actually mining all the activity that you do and kind of pulling out from your status messages, from the applications you interact with, basically like things like tag clouds, which we call interest clouds. And it starts to build up that automatic expertise profile. So the interesting thing is that sometimes the person who has the most expertise in your company about a topic is not the best person to have answer your question, because they may not have time, they may not want to help, whatnot. But there may be someone who has a little less expertise, but is maybe a younger employee or newer to the company, and they're just super passionate about helping you. So, what we're basically doing is how can we automatically build up profiles? So when we attach to Active Directory, we're sucking in all the employee data. As we watch you use the product, we're pulling out those different pieces of expertise and putting them on your profile, which as a user you can edit. If you don't want to share that you're an expert on Linux virtualization, you can take that out. But basically, how do we construct these profiles and attach metadata without forcing the user to do it? And that's a big win for companies.
Yeah. Where I was going with that is, when Rocky and I visited Microsoft recently, they have 2 or 3 screens in front of them, and if somebody calls in, up on their screen pops up all sorts of information about that caller, right? Yeah. Both an external caller like me, or an internal caller, an employee who's calling them up for some information. Are you thinking about building that kind of unified communications platform system where you would partner with somebody who's doing phone systems and it would pop up details up on the screen?
Yeah, I mean, so we are. I mean, we're looking at how can we fit UC into the stream. I think, the UC market is still kind of feeling itself out for large enterprises, so there's a lot of players in the space. But I do think having that contextual information on your screen while you're interacting with another user is just incredibly important. It's going to be important for that, having that competitive advantage in the future. So where, I think where it makes sense, we'll definitely want to integrate. I mean, we have one of the most open APIs in the industry. I mean, you can do basically anything you want with the feed and interact with it. And where it makes the most sense, we'll build it in. And where you see companies want to build in activity streams and microblogging, we'll definitely let them use our platform to do that.
Are you thinking about how to integrate location into the social stream?
Yeah, so the platform today, has a very similar location feature like Twitter has. So every message, you can attach your location to it, and especially where you come in off a mobile device, we're obviously pulling that with your GPS coordinates. I think location is incredibly important. It's something we'll invest a lot in 2011. We already have some customers who have been doing API mashups with Google Maps. So anytime anyone puts in a message or a system generates a message, you can look at a Google map and you can see it, pinged. And so it's showing all the different updates, and you can zoom into your locale and look at it. And geography does play a huge role, because even if you don't follow a system or a person in your company, if you know that there's a geographic tie, that may be something that you want to explore. And it's a way for discovery, but it's also a way for you to recreate situations. So if you have a problem with a customer and you're looking at maybe your predecessor who was in sales before you could look up their old message and get some context on how they dealt with a situation. But if you can get the location, that gives you even more data. So you may be able to see what customer site were they actually at when they sent in that question, right?
Yeah.
And it's a more rich way for you to understand the data and apply that to what you want to do next.
You're here in San Francisco, right in the heart of South Park. Just a few miles away is Zendesk and Satisfaction, and across the bay is Spigot, which does ideation software. These are corporate systems that are new age, that are brand new startups that are getting attention in the world. Are you partnering with any of them to add more information about the health of your business into these streams?
Yeah, so right now we are undergoing partnerships with people who are doing kind of more external facing community. So we really focus primarily on your supply chain and your employee base. And then we're working with some of those guys, and we'll announce partnerships next year in the first quarter about bringing in kind of more market customer data and basically merging that with your internal data to basically just help people work better.
Yep. Anything else that you're noticing happening in the enterprise and that you want to tell us about?
Well, I mean, I think the most interesting thing about the enterprise is just the buying power shifting. So I think over the last 5 to 20 years almost, you've seen the buying power has been very centric within IT, and the big shift is really that lines of business and individual employees are having more and more purchasing power. And there's many reasons for this. It's the rise of the cloud, it's mobile devices, but we talk to a lot of large enterprises that are in Fortune 100 that they're letting their employees bring their own computers to work, right? And they're using virtual desktops for that. They're letting them bring their own iPhones and connecting them up to their Exchange servers. And I just think, you're going to see a restructuring of IT, more aligned with, I think, individual business units rather than a central organization. And I think it's actually working out really well for the customers we have, which are, I'd say, more aggressive and progressive in that arena, have seen really good results because they're really tying business outcomes with IT rather than just having IT be kind of a service organization. And that's, I think, actually really helpful to startups because there's a whole new set of buyers, a whole new set of kind of understanding about how this drives business value rather than just kind of checking a box of software to buy. And I think it's great for the whole ecosystem, and it's great for business in general.
Very cool. Well, thanks for spending some time with me. Where do we find you again?
So just socialcast.com.
And what about on Twitter and you personally?
Yeah, so it's at Socialcast or at Tim Young.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Robert.